He loves Lego.
He loves action figures.
He loves Nerf guns.
He bounces through the house with the kind of remarkable energy only a 5-year-old possesses.
But he isn't at all thrilled when his mom sits him down to get him to read.
It wasn't always like this. Until a few weeks ago, in fact, he was making steady progress in his journey as a reader.
Apple, apple, B's a ball, ball,
Pretty impressive that he can identify each letter, the sound that it makes.
But then this happened.
Bilal at this point is at a place where he knows what the letters sound like. So he's at the k, at, and anytime I sit down with him, either I'll write it out and I'll say, all right, can you sound it out for me? So he will look at the C, he will say ka, he'll look at the A, he'll say ah, he'll look at the T, he'll say ta, and then he'll think of any word that he can think of that starts with C. So he's stuck at the ka sound, and he won't be able to put the three sounds together, although individually he's there. And what am I supposed to do to have him get there? And I haven't yet figured that out because
his name is Bilal, and listening to his mom takes me back to a long ago moment in my kitchen, crouching before the refrigerator, arranging and rearranging the colorful letter magnets with my own daughter, trying to get her to blend the letter sounds to form the word, and feeling utterly stuck. This raises the immediate question, of course, of how to get kindergarteners unstuck. But there is another question too. Why? Why is learning to blend letter sounds such a sticky point for many kindergarteners? Not all, but enough to merit the question. Because my own memory of teaching blending is an uncomfortable one. I cringe at the thought of myself as a young mother rearranging the letter magnets on that fridge. I don't want to recall that I raised my voice in frustration saying, "It's so easy. Mop, big. Why don't you get it?" There's shame in that memory. Even back then, I remember telling myself, calm down. She'll get it eventually. You're not a kindergarten teacher. Luckily, she did pick up blending and segmenting and became quite the reader. But that memory sticks as a moment where I felt utterly inept.
If you could go back and do it over again, how do you think you would approach it differently?
Well, if I could go back 20 years and explain some concepts to that younger, impatient version of myself, if I could frankly talk to Bilal's mom, or to any parent or teacher who is helping an emerging reader with the blending and segmenting of sounds, I guess I would make us some tea. I'd invite us to sit down, and I'd begin with what happens in the brain of someone who is learning to read. I am Harim Atif Khan.
And I am Aiden Hackenberg.
And in this episode of The Teaching Species, we'll learn why learning to read is like a virus taking over the brain. We'll begin with a fascinating study that, on its surface at least, looks like it has nothing to do with reading, but bear with us.
In 2018, neuroscientists performed an experiment on two kinds of musicians.
The first group was made up of beatboxers.
That wasn't a drum machine, it was a beatboxer using his mouth, or to use the researchers' lingo, his vocal apparatus as the instrument.
The other group of musicians consisted of guitarists. These musicians, of course, use their hands to make music.
Both groups put on headphones, lay down, and shut their eyes, allowing themselves to be positioned with their heads inside the cylindrical tubes of the MRI scanners. They concentrated as the first notes of the music wafted in through their headphones.
It was the first time that either group was hearing this music, so they listened intently. The researchers, meanwhile, also leaned in, eyes glued to the scanner screens, studying the musicians' brains as they listened, studying the mysterious dance of the electromagnetic waves in the brain as they took in the music.
What they saw made for exciting headlines not just in the neuroscience literature.
The researchers saw that the different groups of musicians didn't hear music in the same way. For the guitarists, the hand area of the brain lights up. For the beatboxers, the mouth area of the brain is activated. Specifically, if you are a musician, your way of creating music affects the way that your brain hears music. Put simply, an expert musician hears music differently than a layman does. And what if I told you then that an expert reader hears a word differently than someone who is illiterate, no matter their ages? What if I told you that reading changes the way you hear spoken language?
A is for apple.
No.
No?
A for crocodile.
C is for crocodile.
Like a virus that's taking over the brain. That's how British cognitive neuroscientist Uta Frith describes the process of learning to read.
It's a strange analogy because we associate viruses with disease. But think of a virus as something with the power to alter its host's DNA.
Uta Frith writes, learning an alphabetic code is like acquiring a virus that infects the way we process speech, because now, instead of perceiving a word as a whole word, our brain breaks up the word into its constituent sounds. So language is never the same again. End quote.
American neuroscientist Mark Seidenberg picks up this analogy. In his book, Language at the Speed of Sight, brilliant book, by the way, he says, learning to decode print deeply penetrates and, in fact, contaminates the way that the brain had previously mapped out speech. Imagine that I ask you to break up the word sat or pen into separate sounds.
Sat is sat, and pen is p-e-n.
Congratulations. That's proof right there, Aiden, that your brain has been altered by the reading virus. Someone who never learned the alphabet code would not be able to do what you just did. It's because you can read print that you're able to segment or break a word into smaller sounds.
So this is not a natural thing that humans are born being able to do?
No matter how smart someone is, if they never learn to read, they wouldn't be able to segment a word into discrete sound units. Their brain hears the word sat or hen as a continuous sound. It's your brain's knowledge of spelling, which, to borrow the metaphor, has utterly contaminated your way of hearing the word, so that the way you or I or any reader processes words and speech is different from a non-reader's. To use another metaphor from Seidenberg, the letters of a word are like beads on a string. S-t-r-e-n-g, or string. But the sounds are more like a cascading waterfall. Flowy, continuous, string. That's one sound. Bilal right now hears the word cat like a cascading waterfall. You and I, on the other hand, can visualize the word as a string of different sounds. The cognitive demand here for Bilal isn't just high, it's brain altering. Of course it's painful for 5-year-old Bilal. He wants to please his mom, but he doesn't see what she's asking him to see. He hears a continuous waterfall. She's saying there are small droplets of water in there that make up that steady stream.
There's one more moment I want to share with you of a man standing on a stage before a hall of teachers in Qatar. In a polished French accent, he talks through a looping video clip of the brain as it reads a single word.
How does this work exactly? We've conducted a large number of studies, and many other labs in the world have conducted many studies that look at what has been changed in the brain of children or adults after they've learned to read. And in particular, I want to mention here a study that we did very recently.
His name is Stanislas Dehaene, and he is the author of books like How We Learn and Reading in the Brain. On the screen behind him is a shadowy image of the brain with its many folds. Suddenly, a red flare-up of activity unfolds from the back of the brain, where the visual cortex is. A word has entered through the subject's eyes, And from there, it's activated an area that Stanislas Dehaene calls the letterbox. That's the area where the letters are recognized. From there, there's an explosion of brain activity into two other networks, one that's concerned with the pronunciation of the word, and one that's concerned with its meaning. In the letterbox, though, that interface between the visual and the spoken, that's being developed in early readers. You don't see this region light up in people who are illiterate, even in the case of very intelligent adults. The idea that the brain is like plasticine or Play-Doh, that it can be molded or shaped by experience, it's been out there. We call it neuroplasticity. But actually seeing the changed pattern of brain activity before and after a certain kind of teaching takes the implications for teaching to a whole new level.
For one, it challenges this idea that teachers can be metacognitive and demonstrate our own process, that we can think about how we break down a task naturally ourselves and then demonstrate those steps, that process to the kids so that they can mimic us and do the same thing. See, if my brain has been utterly contaminated by the reading virus, if my brain has already developed an interface or letterbox, but my student's brain has not, then me demonstrating my process will not work. My intuition is not reliable here.
So, backing up, how do we take all this and use it to help Bilal?
Before we advise what to do to help him, let's be clear about what not to do with someone who is stuck where Bilal is right now. Number one, don't tell him to look at the picture on the page and guess the word. Don't ask him, what word would make sense here? Those prompts belong to the 3 cueing system, which pushes kids towards using context and pictures. But showing Bilal an easier way than using the letters and the sounds will absolutely sabotage his effort at reading the word. Right at the point when he is on the cusp of the most critical cognitive connection that he should be making right now, he should be considering the letters in the word itself to recognize what this word is.
You use the word sabotage. Why would it sabotage his effort?
So imagine you are running a marathon and you're tired and you're sweaty, and then somebody drives along in a car and says, hop in, I'll drive you to the finish line. Or imagine you're lifting weights to grow muscle and I come along and say, here, take this lever. You could use this lever to lift these weights. Would I be helping or sabotaging your effort?
Yeah, I see. That would be super annoying.
But I have the best intentions. I want to help. Right?
Yes, but of course, my goal isn't just to lift the weight for its own sake or to get from point A to point B. I want to grow the muscle.
That's right. Bilal's goal right now is to learn how the print he sees connects to the sounds he hears to create a word he recognizes. That won't always be his goal. When he's older and hopefully a fluent reader, when he gets to middle school and he's reading a dense text about the Himalayas casting their rain shadow, in that situation, his middle school teacher should absolutely say, look at the map, Bilal. Look at the picture next to the text. Use what you know about mountain ranges. What's your theory here? The 3 cueing prompts in that situation would be spot on necessary because he'd be trying to create meaning. But if the goal is the mastery of phonics, then we don't want to give him the crutch of meaning-making cues. His brain is on the verge of rewiring itself in crucial ways, but it's all happening under the hood, so to speak. The teacher can't see it. Number 2, don't take away the print. Let me repeat this because there's still this mistaken belief out there that children need to learn to isolate sounds in oral speech before they can expect to do this in printed text. All of those phoneme manipulation games where you take one sound out and you replace it with another. Cat, take away the k and put in a p. There, now you got pat. Take the p away, now put in a h. Now you got hat. Do those games on paper where the child can see the letters. Or use magnet letters, but don't try to make an oral game of them. Don't take away the print.
That makes sense because the whole idea is for the kid to connect the sound to the print, quite literally to create the interface between these two systems in the brain, connecting the visual to the auditory.
Number 3, be patient and don't overwhelm him. Don't expect the child to just get it the first time. Practice blending for a bit. Move on to some other activity, then come back to it later. So short bursts of practice extended over days, even weeks.
And number 4, have Bilal practice blending letters that can hold a continuous sound rather than letters that produce pop and stop sounds. C and T are pop and stop, while letters M and N are continuous.
You can stretch out a continuous sound like the one that the letter M makes. You can go until you run out of breath. You can do the same with S if you hiss like a snake. You can't do that with P. P is a pop and stop. You can't do that with B. B is also pop and stop. So the word man would be easier to blend than cat. When you blend the sounds man, you can mimic a cascading waterfall better than you can with a word like cat. Fan, Sam, Zen, all of those words use consonants that have a continuous sound.
Sliding your finger under the letters as you're stretching them out like this is another helpful thing to do, just to really connect the visual and the auditory.
Number 5, do lots of onset and rhyme work with Bilal. An onset is the starting sound of a syllable, while the rhyme is the remaining part. That includes the vowel and the ending sound. In the word fin, for instance, f is the onset and in is the rhyme.
Blending an onset and rhyme is easier because it's just 2 sounds that need to be blended, not 3. So k at is harder than k at.
Again, don't take it with a print. Use index cards to write out the onset and the rhyme. Then you can keep the same rhyme, you can keep the same ending and swap out the onset or the beginning. So you can keep at and swap out the k.
There's a wonderful blog post from Mark Seidenberg where he explains this. We'll put that in the show notes.
The starting sound is the easiest one to isolate.
How do you stop before you get to the point where the kid decides, I hate reading? How much time a day should be spent on teaching phonics?
A very wise teacher once told me, she said, phonics is like surgery. You don't leave the body all opened up lying on the table indefinitely. You go in, you do the operation, then you get out. You'll see the internet telling you to spend 30 minutes a day on phonics. Good luck keeping those 5-year-olds engaged. Unless you're gamifying it or storyfying it or making them jump around or you got some kind of puppets or you're hooking it into some kind of dopamine reward system, I'd say 5 to 10 minutes of intense, focused instruction is great. Then, for the love of God, move on to reading a fun story out loud. Show them the cool pictures. Get them talking about a story. Like, do other things that build rich language.
Yeah, because phonics is critical, but it isn't the goal of reading. The goal would be comprehension. I think of it like riding a bicycle, 2 wheels, and phonics is just one, the decoding, the word recognition. And the second wheel is the meaning making, the comprehension wheel. And the frame that connects them two is the fluency bridge. And riding a bicycle is this balancing act. One has to steer, pedal, keep an eye on traffic. But once you learn, you're proficient at it. You don't need to think about it. It just becomes automatic. It becomes second nature. But you're not relying on just one of the wheels. You need both. So kindergartners can't just be focused on phonics alone, comprehension alone. Got to have 2 of them. Got to have both of them.
So what should you be doing to help kindergartners succeed with reading?
Any activity that builds their concepts and vocabulary, and it's okay, it's better to keep it playful, keep it fun.
So singing together, clapping, tapping, dancing to words, that builds phonological awareness. Lyrics that have sophisticated words and concepts.
Kids love repeated read-alouds of their favorite picture books.
Repeated read-alouds. I remember. My daughter had this like tattered picture book that she wanted me to read to her 11 times a day.
Yeah, it's a common lament of parents of that age, but repetition is critical for learning. She was probably cementing a sense of story structure, story language, syntax with each rereading. I would say being able to sustain focus for any long-form content, any cartoon even, especially a movie, with a story arc like that unfurls over the course of an hour, it's so much harder than watching a 4-second TikTok video. So yes, bring back the old movies and watch them together. Long before formal phonics, learning to read starts with learning the forms and conventions of spoken language. So long before the child picks up a book or a pencil, long before that first day of school.
Let's end with another quote from Stanislas Dehaene. To learn is to form an internal model of the external world.
To learn is to form an internal model of the external world. That sounds right to me.